Sprout sat down at gate 14 at 0612 hours and he did not get up. The traveler in front of him was clean on every board I had. Retinal match, gate match, vocal print inside a hair of baseline. The overlay panel above the booth blinked a calm, confident green, human, confirmed, cleared. The man smiled at me the way tired travelers smile, like he just wanted his bag and a chair. Sprout sat on the tile between us, 40 pounds of brown and white and floppy ears, and looked at the man's shoes and did not so much as twitch his tail. For years on this booth had taught me what a normal alert looked like. A normal alert was loud, a bark, a lean, a nose driving into a bag seemed like he meant to climb inside it. This wasn't that. This was the other thing he did, the rarer thing, the one that meant something underneath the smell was simply wrong in a way his nose had no better word for than sit and don't move. I'd seen it maybe a dozen times in 4 years. Every one of those 12 had turned out to be something. He's clear, I said, mostly to myself, because the board said so and the board had never been wrong in 4 years. Sprout disagreed. Sprout always disagreed quietly. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just sat, square and patient, the way he sat for a held biscuit, and waited for somebody smarter than the building to notice. I'd worked the threshold checkpoint at Concourse for long enough to know that was the only alarm he had, and that it had never once been wrong. I called secondary. The traveler's smile didn't change. That was the part that should have told me everything sooner than it did. Nobody smiles like that when they're innocent and being delayed. Voss, my shift supervisor, was not happy about it. He never was. Callaway, that's the 4th pull this week, he said, low, not wanting the queue to hear. 4 false stops on a dog. Corporates asking why our average gate time is up 9 seconds. 9 seconds, on a fleet contract that pays by the minute. He's not been wrong yet. He's a dog. He's a beagle with 11,000 verified alerts and 0 false positives in 4 years of service record. The scanners are 8 months old and they've never caught anybody. Voss didn't have an answer for that one. He just told me to clear it fast and waved the next traveler up while Sprout and I walked our flagged man to the side room, where, as always, the man's papers checked out, his face checked out, his blood panel checked out, and he was released 40 minutes later with an apology voucher for the delay. That was alert number 4. None of them had panned out. The board kept saying confirmed. Sprout kept sitting down. By the 2nd hour of the shift the queue had backed up past the rope line, and a slate-skinned Mern trade envoy near the front kept checking the time on 3 different wrist instruments, the kind of fidget that means somebody's running a schedule tighter than they want you to see. Mern don't fidget. Mern glide. I'd worked enough Mern diplomatic traffic to know the difference, and this one was fidgeting. Between the 4th alert and the 5th, there was a 3rd one I almost lost. A woman traveling with an infant, the kind of traveler nobody on a checkpoint wants to slow down, and Sprout sat at the edge of her carry lane and refused his treat for the first time all shift. Voss was already 3 feet away, already reaching to wave her through himself, already saying we don't hold babies up over a hunch. I held my hand flat, wait, and ran the sweep anyway, fast version, 90 seconds instead of 9 minutes. It came back human. Tired, dehydrated, traveling on 3 hours of sleep, but human, every reading true. I apologized. She didn't hear me, she was already gone, soothing the baby, glad to be through. Sprout watched her go and didn't relax until the gate closed behind her. I logged it as a clean miss and didn't tell Voss what it had cost me to trust the dog and be wrong about why, because being wrong about the why didn't mean the alert itself had been wrong, something about that lane had been off, and it took me until shift's end to work out it was the air handler, recently serviced, carrying a chemical trace Sprout had never smelled in that corridor before. He hadn't called the woman. He'd called the room. I should have read that sooner. It cost us 4 minutes and nearly cost the woman her connection, and it was the only mistake either of us made all day, which, against 5 real catches, was a number I could live with. Sprout sat down again at gate 16 40 minutes later. Different traveler. Different face. Same quiet, patient refusal to move. This one carried a manifest for a dock loader named Eli Marsh, 19, returning from a 6-month contract on the Outer Rings. The board confirmed him clean in under a second, retinal, gait, vocal, the works, faster and greener than any of the others. Too fast, if I'd been the kind of officer who trusted her gut over her instruments. I wasn't, not yet. Sprout was. He's a kid coming home from a labor contract, Voss said, arms crossed, watching the queue swell. You really want to hold up a tired teenager because the dog's having an opinion? I want to know why my dog has had 5 opinions today and the panel's had 0. Voss didn't like that math either, but he let me run it. The MERN envoy near the front of the line had stopped fidgeting entirely. He was watching gate 16 the way you watch something you've already lost. I pulled the boy aside, gently, the way you do with someone who might genuinely just be exhausted, and asked him 3 questions any dock loader on that specific contract route would know without thinking: the name of the ring foreman, the mess deck's standing joke about the recycled coffee, the call sign of the tug that ran cargo to the outer platforms. He answered all 3. Correctly. Smoothly. Too smoothly, the way you answer a test you studied for instead of a life you lived. Sprout still hadn't moved. I'd learned, over 4 years, not to argue with that. I requested a full skin conductivity sweep, the slow kind, the kind that takes 9 minutes and annoys everybody in the building. Voss groaned. The MERN envoy near the front of the queue suddenly remembered an appointment and tried to leave the line. Security stopped him, politely, the way you stop someone who hasn't technically done anything wrong yet. The sweep came back at minute 8. The boy's epidermal signature didn't match human baseline. Not on the surface. The overlay sat there fine, smooth and seamless, and built by somebody who understood exactly what every scanner in this building was checking for. It was underneath that it failed, a chemical mismatch in sweat composition so small that no instrument on the concourse had been built to flag it. Sprout's nose had flagged it from 4 meters away the moment the gate opened. What came off the boy, slow and clean and without a fight, wasn't Eli Marsh. It was a MERN operative wearing an identity overlay built from a real young man's biometric file, a file that should only have existed if the real Eli Marsh had been processed through this exact checkpoint at some point and never logged a return. We didn't get the full shape of it that shift. That came later, from people whose job was bigger than mine, a smuggling lane running real travelers' identity templates out one direction and MERN operatives back and wearing them, for months of clean passage through a checkpoint built specifically to catch exactly that, beaten clean by paperwork until a beagle refused to sit anywhere except directly between the operation and the open concourse. 5 alerts that shift. 5 overlays. 5 operatives quietly walked into a back room instead of a customs hall, and from there it stopped being my problem and started being somebody else's, the kind of problem handled in rooms I don't get invited into. I don't know what happened to the real Eli Marsh. Nobody told me, and I stopped asking after the 2nd week, because some questions you ask the people whose job it is to find an answer, and you let them do it without your help. The MERN envoy near the front of the queue was gone by the time I looked up again. Quietly. Without a scene. That told me more than the sweep did. Voss didn't apologize, exactly. Supervisors rarely do. But the next morning the gate time metric had a new line item, K9 priority hold, no override, and nobody mentioned the 9 seconds again. Sprout got his biscuit at the end of shift, same as always, and fell asleep in his crate before I'd finished locking the booth down, one ear twitching at something only he could hear. He never knew what he'd done. He never needed to. The board had called 5 strangers human, clean and confident and green across every line, and a dog who'd never read a sentence in his life had looked at all 5 of them and simply refused to be finished looking. 4 years in, and I still hadn't found anything in that building smarter than him. I'd stopped expecting to.